Well, let's continue getting a reaction on this deal from Shweta Narayan. She's a global climate and health campaigner speaking to us from Cochin in India. Shweta, good to have you on the program. So what are your thoughts on what is being hailed as a historic deal?
Well, I sort of concur with your colleague Reagan who was speaking from Dubai. I think it's important to recognize that this is for the first time in nearly 30 years that COP has finally acknowledged that the root cause of climate crisis is fossil fuels and has had an outcome. This outcome today of the language of a transition away from fossil fuel basically marks the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era. This is a big moment. However, let's also remember we're in 2023, which was the hottest year on record. We're living through the climate crisis. So the actions, the words that we see there does not match the urgency of requirement that the kind of actions that we really need to avert a catastrophe. And I mean, if you look at the language, the transition away from fossil fuels, they're already at a risk from the beginning because there's no agreement on how it will be funded, how historical polluters will take responsibility, how there will be justice and equity in ensuring that vulnerable populations and countries who have contributed to least to the catastrophe, the crisis, are protected. There are loopholes in the process by adding false solutions like carbon capture and storage, which does not, again, limit the fossil fuel usage. So I think the intent is signaled, but that's not going to be enough because the moment that we're living in and the urgency that we have, it's very clear that there is no strong climate action, and the result of all of this will be paid by our health, by people's health on this planet.
And most likely by people in developing countries who do seem to be bearing the brunt of the climate crisis. And as you say, Shweta, the language is so important here because this deal isn't legally binding. So how do you hold countries accountable? And from what we've seen with other COP summits and deals signed there, how much of this will actually be implemented?
I think, again, I have a mixed feeling about it. I think the fact that we have brought fossil fuels and that forced the governments and forced the parties to recognize this, I feel that this is the success of the civil society. The constant organizing that civil society groups, the vulnerable groups, the small island nations, their leadership in kind of putting fossil fuels front and center was really important. And that work needs to continue. We cannot lose hope. We have to hold our governments accountable. The reality is before everybody else. We are all experiencing various levels of this climate crisis that we're talking about. And the urgency is there. As communities, as societies, as civil society members, as health community members, it's now our duty to ensure that we hold our respective governments accountable, because we know that the failure to act will cost lives. It's not about just commitments made or temperatures lowered. It's about lives. We are dealing with people's lives over here. So the urgency is there, and that will be a reminder for communities and groups to get together to hold all governments accountable.
Do you feel hopeful about this deal and the implementation? Are there positive aspects that you can see in this deal that are really going to help us moving forward?
There's a lot that needs to be done, but my only sort of hope right now is that we've made governments recognize that fossil fuels are at the core of the climate crisis, the cause of the climate crisis, and we are not giving up yet. We will do everything within our power as civil society members, as health community members, to make sure that there is a possibility for a thriving future for our children and grandchildren.
Shweta Narayan, appreciate you coming onto the program and your analysis. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.